welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. My name is Diana Skaya. Serbia is facing growing uncertainty in its energy sector, and this after U.S. sanctions were imposed on the country's largest oil company. Now, with potential disruptions to fuel supplies and broader economic consequences, officials warn the coming weeks could be critical. Now, we take a closer look at what this means for Serbia and the region with my guest, Ivana Stradner, research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies USA. Ivana, so glad to have you here on World Talks on TVP World.
Always wonderful to be with you.
So, Ivana, talk us through the immediate impact that these U.S. sanctions are going to have on, on ordinary citizens, first of all, and of course on different, gas stations, right, and across Serbia. What can we expect?
So to begin with, the United States, after numerous warnings, actually slapped sanctions on Serbia's largest oil and gas distributor, which has very close ties to Russian firm Gazprom Neft. And even though it came as a surprise to many in the country, it should have not come as a surprise because there were numerous waivers for the past several months from the United States trying to make a deal in sense of giving Serbia another chance to divorce itself from the Russian gas. But the president of Serbia has been playing that balancing games between East and the West, and he actually thought that he could find a deal with the Americans and that the United States will just close its eyes and to give him a pass on his deals with Russia. But it didn't actually happen, and such sanctions actually played a critical role because the United States just target the center of gravity in the Western Balkans, which is Russian gas. This is a huge thing because Russia has been blackmailing energy for a very long time in the region. And without energy over there that is linked to Russia, the government is actually going to face numerous consequences. In terms of already consequences, we already see. For example, there are numerous now reports that it's impossible, for example, very difficult to use credit cards to buy, gas and gas stations. There were numerous already reports that for example, air companies are also not happy with this decision, and they're also refraining from having any ties to Nice company. So this is already having some sort of effects, but the Serbian government claims that this is not going to impact the country because they have enough reserves. So we are going to actually see if this is true or not, because the Serbian government is trying to make a new deal with Russia, but I doubt that Russia is going to give Vučić a pass and to give him and to save him in this particular situation. So we are going to actually see how this is going to impact ordinary citizens, despite Vučić's claims that there are enough reserves. However, that's not also the purpose of such sanctions. And the U.S. Embassy already was very clear that such sanctions are not targeting the Serbian citizens, but the Russian government that is weaponizing energy in Ukraine and funding the war.
And that's another question, that I wanted to ask you. How does this Russian stake in Nice actually influence Serbia's political and particularly economic decisions?
This is actually extremely important. And as I mentioned, Russian energy, it's a center of gravity. And without Russian energy in Serbia, Russia will face numerous problems. So this is really a step in the right direction. I think it's really past time also for the EU and the United States to work on different solutions on how to divorce Serbia in a long run from the Russian gas. It's not going to be easy because President Vučić is not willing to be closer to the European Union, even though, once again, today he actually emphasized how Serbia is on the EU path. Yes, it's on the EU path because he needs the EU funding, but he's not interested in the full EU membership. because that would jeopardize his authoritarian
and
rule.
on that,
plus,
Ivana, I will interrupt you right there, because on what you just said, I want us to take a listen to what Ursula von der Leyen said earlier.
We are connecting Serbia to the EU's energy market. This is the true guarantee that Serbian families will be safe and warm in winter. And we have concrete projects in motion. The Trans-Balkan Power Corridor, for example, linking Serbia's grid with its neighbors and with the European Union. And the Serbia-Bulgaria gas interconnector. And we are prepared to invest further in it. We also invited Serbia to join the EU's joint gas procurement mechanism, because together we are using our collective market power to secure better energy prices.
Well, I mean, Ivana, you just heard it right there. I mean, Ursula von der Leyen, giving essentially Vučić, open arms, saying, come, the EU is open for you, right? And you're saying that he's just not going to comply with it. Now, what else do you think on what she said? How can the situation actually unfold, and how likely is Serbia to comply under more pressure?
There has been a long history of her appeasement of President Vučić. And just like Angela Merkel, who has been trying to appease the Serbian government for many years, now she also believes that by bringing Serbian government closer to the EU, that is going to actually solve all the problems. In theory, it sounds great. The problem is that in practice, it will not work, because the Serbian government doesn't want to join the EU as a member state. They want the EU path to be as long as possible, because Vučić needs the European Union money for his political survival. He already has very close ties to China and very close ties to Russia, not only economically, but also in terms of military, in terms of security, in terms of other deals. So he's very much aligned with Beijing and Moscow. However, he also understands that for his political survival, he needs the EU support. So once again, he's playing the EU like a fiddle, always trying to escalate and then de-escalate, and to position himself as the only pillar of stability. And let's not forget, there are massive protests in Serbia. Right. And he has shown consistently that his values when it comes to democracy are far, far, far from the EU. So unfortunately, I have to bring very bad news to von der Leyen that if she believes that Vučić wants to bring Serbia closer to the EU, she is sorely mistaken.
Well, that's what we usually do, most likely in news. We, say the bad news as well, hoping to hear good news. But let me ask you this. Could this entire situation in Serbia actually trigger wider regional instability in the Western Balkans?
So I don't believe that sanctions on energy are going to trigger wider dissatisfaction in the region. I don't believe that that is going to be a trigger. The Serbs are already very dissatisfied with the government. There are massive protests. They're going to continue, no matter, regardless of the energy crisis. People there are already used to living under horrible conditions, so this is not going to actually impact them in terms of being even more dissatisfied with the government. They are going to continue. However, make no mistake, as Vučić faces more troubles with protests, he's going to be willing to use very vulnerable situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina as well as in Kosovo, again to escalate and then to de-escalate and then to position himself as a pillar of stability. He did it in the past. He might do it again, but this time we should not fall for his tricks.
Ivana, you have mentioned the protests here. Please tell us how is that looking in present-day Serbia? Protests, of course, are related to the Novi Sad canopy, right?
Yes, you're right. We are facing almost the 1 year anniversary of protests, and protests are actually growing, and students are not willing to stop fighting for democracy. Unfortunately, nowadays there are so many bad news across the world, so protests, don't reach on cover pages of major newspapers. But as someone who has been following this closely, they are happening, and students are not willing to stop because they want to stay there. They want to build their future over there. They are sick and tired of corruption and how Serbia is sliding towards autocracy. They do not want Serbia to become Belarus 2.0, and they are not going to give up on their demands. We are going to see about potential elections and what Vučić is up to, but the European Union should absolutely be realistic about the situation in Serbia. They were trying to appease also Lukashenko for many years. It didn't work, and they're making a very similar mistake with Vučić.
Thank you so much, Ivana Stradner, a research fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, for all your input here with us on World Talks.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Stay tuned for more news and features.